This video is unofficially sponsored by my E6 subscription, because if you subscribe, we all beat YouTube at their own game. So my Lightroom catalogue currently consists of 24,493 images. Oh, hello by the way. And that's mainly digital captures, but there's also a few thousand scanned transparencies from my film days, and several thousand more of those transparencies are still hanging in a 4-drawer metal filing cabinet. Loads of images from years of shooting, most of which I don't really look at anymore, apart from in Lightroom when I flick through them looking for example images to perhaps use in these YouTube videos, or as examples to illustrate a technique in my e-guides that are part of my E6 subscription. Whatever I talk about, whatever I mention, I usually have an example image to back up my ideas and thoughts. So if I never took a picture again, I probably got enough now. 24,000 or so images is pretty good for anyone as a collection, most of which I'm pretty proud of. But maybe that's just halfway. I'm 55 now. I know, I don't look it, do I? And I've been shooting professionally for about 30 years in total. So as long as I stay in good health, maybe I can continue shooting for another 30 years and make that total nearer to 50,000 in my Lightroom catalogue. But then what will happen to all those images when I'm dead and gone? My pictures can be passed on, of course, in my will. Must get a will sorted. Left to my family, to my son perhaps, if he wants them, but to be honest, it's a bit of a hardship trying to get him to look at my images now, never mind when I'm gone. No, all those pictures of benches and pylons will probably be better off put in the coffin beside me, all cremated with me at the end. I wonder how those hard drives will cope in that heat. I wonder if we'll just leave hard splinters with me. Ouch. So I mentioned in a recent video when I was talking about printing that the end result didn't matter that much to me. It doesn't matter if my digital images or even my analog film images end up being printed out onto paper or just seen via the web and on social media on a tablet screen. As long as I'm happy with the result, then I'll give you all the opportunity to see them too, if you wish, via social media. And then, well, that's the end of that image. It's done, and it's on with the next one. To me, it's more about the picture taking process, and I'm sure it's the same for many of you too. And maybe once I've seen the end result and placed it somewhere for others to see as well, it could then be deleted. As I say, the only time I really look back at my images is to pick an example to illustrate a technique for an idea that I've probably done before, and therefore here's my example of that to inspire you in some way. I guess that's my job now as a content creator, as an educator, as a teacher, or whatever you want to call me these days, as I'm not necessarily a professional photographer. I don't think anyone on YouTube is really. All the photographers I know from my era, if they're not YouTubers, they're now workshop leaders, they're teachers. All professional photographers at one time have now become educators. My old images, once used in a magazine or wherever on their initial use, would then be sent off to photo libraries and stock agencies, where they might get used again in another capacity. But I don't do that anymore. Those days of lucrative stock sales are long gone. So could I be brave enough to delete my images after taking them? I don't think this would happen in camera. I don't think it needs to be that abrupt. I need to process that result and create something that I saw when I stood on location, behind the camera, ready to press the shutter. That is half the process. The other half is processing that raw file and creating a finished TIFF. I usually show that to my wife, she's often interested, and then it's either filed away or made into a JPEG ready to include in the next video release, or out on my Instagram. And then I'm on to the next one, as I say. So when I'm gone, if anyone is interested in who I was, they can just watch one of my videos. Before that, they would have caught up with my work in one magazine or another. But I don't have a legacy as such. I'm not that important. Most of us aren't, and our pictures will just die with us, which is a shame, as they often define who we are. My photography is really all that I am. But my work will slowly disappear when I've gone. No one will be interested in it or perhaps remember it. I, as a photographer, will just be replaced by another. I'm not Ansel Adams or Martin Parr or whoever whose work and life is kept on file as a museum record. So maybe I should ask the question now. Who wants my images as I'm done with them? Any image over 6 months old is out of date now. In my new work, I'm trying to better myself, better the last result, improve on what I've done before, so that I have a new version to show you that would now take priority over an older version, to show you who I am now, this year. We all have early versions of our work in our catalogue, probably images best kept for our eyes only. It's all important work though that we take to improve ourselves through the early stages, but only images that are important to us now as it shows our progress, it shows our improvement. But if we show people examples of our work, we wouldn't search within those first 10,000 images or so. So maybe we should all have a bit of a clear out on a yearly basis. Instead of 24,000 images in my library, maybe that should be kept to just 10,000. 10,000 examples that I think are good enough to show who I am now. This culling is something I'm definitely falling behind with, as back when I shot film, I would never keep anything other than the perfect results. Storing transparencies was costly and took space, and so the bad images, well, I had no room for the bad images, so I chucked them. Digital images are easier to store, however, and I now have around 20,000 terabytes of hard drive storage, all backed up to the cloud. Admittedly, a lot of that is video footage, and again, do I really need to keep all that? I would have to double check to see how many of that is actual RAW files, but ever since I started shooting digitally, I've never deleted the bad shots. I just star rate the good ones, process them, and move on. I'm therefore storing a lot of rubbish that will never ever see the light of day, and maybe I should do that just to save me having so many hard drives, and at the same time delete any image that is more than a few years old, because maybe that's not who I am anymore. So maybe those first 10,000 images plus anything over 5 years old are the old me. That's my early work, and it's time to move on. However, before I do press delete on those images, I do have one more use for them, and that is in my new zine. So I've done e-guides before, hundreds of them for E6, and a few ebooks too, but never a zine, and I've always done digital versions of books rather than a printed copy. It's just easier and less risky as a product. But most of the zines that I've seen and purchased have purely been a showcase of a photographer's work, which is all well and good, but I wanted mine to offer something more. So, as well as being a showcase of my work, of a particular shoot, mine go behind the scenes of that shoot, behind the picture, the story, the technique, the idea, the approach, and the vision behind those pictures. So I've created my first one, and that is now up on my website for you to purchase and download, and I hope becomes the first of many. You can purchase these separately, but they will be available free as part of my E6 subscription, so that's even more value now. Check out my website for more details, and keep checking back for the next release. You know, just so I don't get accused of making a video to plug each one. I know how fickle you lot can be. So what do you do with all your old images? Are they just sitting there gathering dust, or do you go through them every now and then? Would you ever put them online, or could you honestly just delete them? Save everyone the horror show. For me, the next image is probably more important than the last. That's the one that excites me more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.